Hi, this is going to be the first of many videos doing a design breakdown of my GB Studio game ERF. You're going to see how the hamburger patty is made. So this is going to spoil the game for you if you haven't played it. So maybe just spend 15-20 minutes playing the game. It's really short. Alright, so let's just start the video here. Screen record of the game. Alright, so first of all, I'll talk about the music. I wanted the music to fully integrate with what was happening in the game, not just something that was in the background. So throughout the game, um, whenever there's scene changes, or even when the music changes, the scene will also change in reaction to the music sometimes. So it goes both ways. And I'll have other videos explaining the technical side of how I did this. It's basically done with music routines. But the general design idea could be applied to any type of game that somebody might make. So what I did was I had short looping segments of music. And there's 4 sound channels in Game Boy games. And the music is basically muting and unmuting different channels at the appropriate times and also jumping from loop to loop. And that's all it is to make all the dynamic music in this game. So in this game, when there's events that occur, then the music will react to the event. So if there's a situation that goes on, let's say for a minute, then the music could be consistent for that minute. But once the situation changes, then the music will also change. And the advantage of this, I think, is the music feels less like just background ambience, but something that's fully integrated to what is occurring in the game. And that just creates more immersion for the player, I think. Yeah, so you saw the music changed when the scene changed there. And I'll talk a bit about the way I handled the intro and the text here throughout the game, in fact. But one thing I tried to do was design principle, avoid redundancy. So there's different ways of storytelling. Part of it's done through the text, and then part of it is the visuals. And I like to kind of separate the two things so they're not both describing the same thing. Actually, let me back up slightly here, because first place I did this was here. So there's this kind of like a dolly. There's like a dolly shot here as it shows the ship, and so a way of handling the text that would be very redundant would be, for example, the narrator. Let's say maybe the narrator is the boy from the game, and he's saying, "Oh, I've been traveling through space for 6 months, and I finally reached Earth." Right? That is like the same as what you see, and it's redundant, and it's kind of on the nose. But it's more interesting if there's a little bit of subtlety, and people kind of have to piece together what is happening. So that's what I did here. First, people can see the ship. They're not sure what it is at first, but eventually they can kind of figured out, especially when it gets to the thrusters. But the text is sounds like text or sounds like speech that you deal with when you're crossing a border or like at customs or at the airport when you're going into a new country. So the visuals show something, but the text suggests something else. And the people in their brain, they piece these two things together. And that is what really hooks people. When they connect the dots themselves and they don't have everything spelled out to them, they are being like a detective and the story is much more meaningful to them. They're pretty much like a participant. So throughout the game, I tried to do that. What you see visually or what people say is sometimes separated from what is happening visually. And yeah, I had real fun researching space travel, and so I kept my story relatively realistic, grounded. Even though it's sci-fi, it's not really science fantasy, more science. I don't know. I guess science fiction. So I wanted realistic spacecraft and realistic space travel. And it's pretty interesting, like, why are these things spinning? Well, when people travel for long distances through space, they can't just be floating around. They need to have, um, their bodies need to feel gravity, or else it will atrophy or they will get sick. So to travel through space, I mean, probably a lot of you know this already, but um, one way to create artificial gravity is centrifugal force. So if you have something spinning, like those fairground rides where you stand on the walls of a cylinder, and then it starts spinning, and then you get sucked against the wall, and then you're lifted off the ground. That's the same idea here. So that's what this spacecraft is. Um, yeah, and I really went in depth with the research. So one spinning, like this is a spinning cylinder. So one spinning cylinder will also create torque. So the ship would start to twist, which you don't want. It'll just mess up the direction that you're traveling in. So that's why two cylinders spinning in counterclockwise direction relative, well, counter to each other. Play it here so you can see, right? That will cancel out the torque. So why have all this realism in the game? Well, the game is, so the story, I don't know if it's even right to call it a game, more like a visual novel, but this, I'll call it game for the sake of convenience. This game is more a character-focused story. So the characters have some complexity to them. So I wanted the sci-fi aspects to be relatively realistic and grounded too. So then it also, like, because the space travel feels more involved, like it's quite a journey and there's a distance, this realism really emphasizes that, like the distance that the boy traveled. Okay, so let's look ahead here. Yeah, okay. So here, whoops. Yeah, here is, you kind of say, like the whole intro is like a long cutscene. So um, the medium that this, this is a video game, the medium of video games. So the video games involve interactivity. It's not a movie. It's not a film. So I don't know. Personally, I don't think it's good to have an intro that's too long. That's just non-interactive. Because then why not just make a film? So um, that's why I broke up this long cutscene with a little bit of interactivity. Like, for me, when a cutscene is too long, I'm just like, oh, come on, just let me do something. So here I put in a little bit of interactivity, almost like a quick time event. You can, you have to just put down the urn here in front of this customs official. And so it's pretty much the Game Boy equivalent of what we know in modern nowadays as a QuickTime event. So it's, I don't know, I think it's interesting how we can think of and apply modern game design elements and transfer it over to older tech, older formats. It just shows you that, it's not really the graphics or like the fidelity of something that makes something immersive, but it's more just the mechanics, or I'm not sure what the right word is, but like the concepts, not so much the tech, which is important. Okay, and so here I anything that's interactive in the game, I put a little arrow there so you can see it bobbing up and down here in front of the guy. So why did I do it like this? Well, the focus of the game is the story, really. I didn't want people to need to hunt around a lot to find out what to interact with. So I made all the interactions super obvious. There's an arrow for everything that's important that you need to go press the interact button on. So it depends on the game. I don't know. I think for my game, this works well. Some games, maybe part of the fun is discovering hidden things. But mine is more just focus on telling the story, empathize with the characters. So I want to remove any friction that could get in the way of that. And yeah, in terms of color too, here I chose, overall, I made the off-world people and off-world scenes have more white. So you can see they're all dressed in white. The boy's more white. Whereas the Earth people and the Earth environments are darker. So yeah, theming with color. I was trying to do that. And here, the boy, like the customs official, he says, anything to declare. And there's that principle again, don't be redundant. I wanted, like, the boy could say, oh, here is my grandfather's ashes. And then he puts maybe he doesn't even put the urn there, he just says that, right? But it's more interesting to separate it and make the visuals and the text do two different things, and when they work together, it makes the whole, right? So 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? So the answer is the boy puts the urn on the table, and then the text fills in the next piece of missing information. The official says death and cremation certificate, so then you kind of figure out, hey, what is that thing that was put there, right? So it's when you let the player put the puzzle pieces together, that makes it really interesting. I mean, that's the kind of game I love. I just, even when there's very little interaction, just doing that detective work is gameplay. I feel like, yeah, and so it sets up a question too, like, why is this boy carrying these ashes, right? So raise a question and then answer it later. Don't answer it right away. Leave some questions, and that hooks people. They want to find out, hey, why? Yeah. Here's the space elevator going down. Yeah, and for my research, apparently, I can't remember now, it would take a couple days, I think, to reach Earth, even if it was going really fast. Like, I think, I don't know, I can't remember now, honestly. But yeah, so, yeah, and I used a technique from film all throughout the intro. You can see it here happening. Like, everything seems in order, and this has already gone ahead in time. The boy's already traveling down the elevator, but the dialogue is still from the border crossing, or I guess the spaceport crossing, the customs official, right? So this, I got the idea from film, because in film there's a technique called the L cut or the J cut, and it's done with visual and audio. So before one scene cuts to another scene, sometimes you might start hearing the audio of the next scene before the visuals have changed to that. You might hear the ambient sound or even the dialogue of the next scene before you see it. As an example, maybe imagine a nighttime scene. It's a war zone, and there's soldiers in a tent. And then the commander says to the soldiers, "At dawn, we move out." And then the picture cuts to sunrise, and then you see helicopters lifting off the ground, and then the soldier's voice. You still hear the commander's voice earlier, and he says, "And there's no turning back." Right? So at dawn, we move out, and there's no turning back. But the visuals are separated in time, so that's an L cut, where the what is it? The sound comes in. Oh, sorry, the sound lingers longer from the previous scene. Then the opposite of that would be a J cut, and they're called L and J because of the way, I don't know, when you're doing video editing software, um, there's an audio track and a visual. Yeah, that's too technical maybe. But anyway, they're called L cut and J cut. You can look it up more yourself if you want to see the visually what it looks like, the L and J. But anyway, opposite of an L cut is a J cut. And imagine that scene again with the soldiers. They're in the tent, there's a commander there. He says, "At dawn, we move out." And then before the scene cuts to the next one, they're still in the tent. Maybe you start hearing helicopter blades going in the distance. Right? And then the scene cuts to the helicopters lifting off. So that would be a J cut, where the audio from the next scene starts early and then the visual changes. Yeah, so L cuts and J cuts. Why do they do that in film? It just creates more continuity, emotional continuity between scenes, smooth transitions. It connects the scenes psychologically. And it's super common in films and documentaries. So, why not put it into games? And even something as ancient now as Game Boy games, right? We can, this could have been done with barely any modern technology. Like from 30 years ago, we could do this. So it's worth looking at other mediums and formats and see what we can carry over into games, right? So yeah, there's a few design techniques, right? There's the idea of looping music. Good way to make dynamic music that responds to events. You make little musical loops that seamlessly um, loop back to where it was, and you just stay in that loop until the scene changes or the events occur. So that's one concept. Another concept, use text and visuals to do two different things instead of both redundantly doing the same thing. Number three, um, this is an interactive medium, so I don't know. Maybe you don't have super long cutscenes. Break it up. Get people doing something quickly with some QuickTime events. And another design concept, make it clear what you can interact with. Borrow techniques from other mediums. Was the last thing. J cuts, L cuts. Yeah. So there's um, a bunch of techniques, principles that I tried to use in my game. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this first part of this design breakdown. There's lots more to explore. I'm gonna really love talking about this stuff. So I hope you enjoyed it. I really poured my heart and soul into this game. I hope more people can play it. So if you enjoy it, help me share it with other people. Please give the game a rating on itch.io and add it to a collection. That really gives it a boost, and hopefully more people can see it and enjoy it. And do the YouTube stuff. Subscribe, like, bell, whatever. Okay, so thanks. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good one. Bye bye.